Good morning. Well, we're going to be looking at some more details from the Book of Deuteronomy. But before I start this morning, I want you to think for a while about what Bible you're using when you read the Scriptures. I think this is very important. You see, many people have Bibles in their homes which have been there for many years. And when they pick them off the shelves, well, they're probably in the old King James Version, which is a very good version of the Scriptures, but very often the print is quite small as well. What I want you to do this morning is to think for a while about which Bible you feel most comfortable with. Now, when I'm browsing in the Scriptures, I like using the New Living Translation. It's an easy-to-read Bible. But when I go to study the Scriptures in more detail, then I turn back to the New International Version. But that, you see, is my choice. What you have to do is consider which one is best for you. And I advise you simply to go into a Christian bookstore. You'll find lots of different versions. Take a look at them. Feel which one is right in your hand. Open it and have a look at the print. See what size print you can really use. Find one which you're comfortable with. And if you want my advice, expend a bit of money and get a good binding on the Bible, because this is going to be your companion for days, weeks, months, or even years as we go browsing through it and reading it and thinking about what God is saying to you through it. So I think it's important that people should stop for a while and work this out. Some find the Good News version to be a good version. Others say, no, I really want to stay with the King James Version. Well, that's good as well. But remember, there is an update to the King James Version, the New King James Version, whereas others like to use the New International or others the New Standard Version. All different versions. Find one that you like and then use that for further studying. Also, when you get this Bible, don't be afraid of marking it. There's nothing wrong with marking a Bible. And as you read through it and as you come across a verse which has meant something to you, make a mark alongside it. So when you come back to it next, you'll be able to see what you thought at that particular time. Or if you don't understand a verse, it's often good just to put a small question mark against it. And it's amazing if you pray and as you've been led forward by the Spirit, when you get back to it next and you see that question mark, you think, well, I understand now why that question mark was put there. But in the meantime, in the weeks or the months since I came to it last, God has explained that particular verse to me. See, it's a good thing to have one that you can turn back to over and over again, and in fact enjoy reading. So that's what I wanted to say to you at the very beginning of this week. Now, when we turn back to Deuteronomy, yes, we're going to be looking at some more details from that book, but I'm going to draw it to a close very, very quickly, because I think now I want to move on, for my sake as much as for yours, and go back into the New Testament again. And when we go back into the New Testament, I'm going to be going back to the last book in the Bible. No, it's not Revelation. The last book in the Bible, I'm sure, is the Gospel of John. See, John wrote his Gospel after he had the visions of Revelation. He came back into Ephesus when he was released from prison on Patmos. And as he looked at what the church was doing and how the church was growing, he suddenly realized that the church needed a fresh vision of who Jesus was and what he had done. And so taking the visions he'd had on Patmos, he settles down and he writes the gospel to the church. And that gospel shows us clearly the relationship of Jesus with the Father and the relationship of Jesus with us and our future with him in eternity. So I'm going to go back to the Gospel of John and look at it and go through it and have more pastoral talking as I try to show you how it applies to your lives at the present time. Now, when John had his vision on Patmos, you'll find as you read Revelation, there are lots and lots of images in there which we may not understand. And we don't understand those images because our understanding of the Old Testament is too poor. John is interpreting what he sees in almost Old Testament terms and taking images that God had given to his people in the Old Testament, and he is trying to show how these apply to the Christian church in his day and in all future generations. But we don't very often understand those images because our knowledge of the Old Testament is quite poor and we can't quite follow what he is saying. And that is why I have gone back into these 5 basic books of Moses: Genesis and Exodus, Leviticus and Numbers, and Deuteronomy, to try to give you a better foundation as you try to understand the Old Testament and how God is relating to his people, the Jews, and how that in fact relates into Jesus' ministry and how Jesus' ministry affects us in our everyday lives. And so we're going to be looking at Deuteronomy and looking at some final details from it, and then moving on to the Gospel of John. Now, today I just wanted to think about certain ideas which come up as well. See, when Moses led the people of Israel through the wilderness, they came against certain enemies and they defeated them, like the Amorites and the Bashanites with Og as the great big king of Bashan. But he also says to the people, you have to be careful about the people you're dealing with. And sometimes you're dealing with races that God truly wants to bless. And we look at this again tomorrow in greater detail. Amen.